Express Outdoors has a really cool segment that we call Beyond the Boat. This personal, sit-down, one-on-one conversation with our featured guests allows us to explore the other side of who this person really is. We get a chance to delve into their personal and professional life, why they got into the outdoor industry, and what makes them who they are today. Join us as we get a bit beyond the boat with Express Outdoors. You mentioned a while ago that you've done a lot of duck banding, and I know you've done some studies or worked with some guys on the movement of waterfowl. I personally don't think people realize, and you know, with this Paul Link doing this speckle belly, white-fronted telemetry stuff now, we're learning that our birds move more within the season than we thought they did. And I know you've been down to Mexico and hunted. How much of our birds that come down actually cut across the Gulf and go down there?
Well, I hunted in El Salvador, in Yucatan Peninsula, and we get pintails, teal, blue wing, not green wing, shoveler, and skull by the thousand. And they'll come across that Gulf 550 miles nonstop and hit that Yucatan Peninsula, and then go on down into Central and South America. We banded some birds, teal, early in September, and they were killed in Colombia, South America that same year. So they move, and I think it's good that they do, because they're changing habitat type. And of course, when you put 1 million ducks in one refuge, you playing with fire. Botulism can break out, predation can increase, a lot of things can happen. So you want those birds spread out, and that's what it'll save these waterfowl populations as we go on.
So you think it's possible that, like for instance, last year we had more days of ice last year in South Louisiana than I can ever remember in my hunting career. And typically during those periods of ice, we don't kill our birds till the wind goes back to the south and it warms up. Do you feel our birds move across the Gulf for a short period of time?
I think our birds move east and west.
East and west?
Yeah, because I talked to a lot of hunters in Texas, Mark Merchant and them that hunt right over there in Texas. And when we lose our gadwall, he's wrapped up in gadwall. So it's just a matter of moving around the northern Gulf into Texas and then into Mexico.
So like down to Matagorda Bay, down in that lower...
Right. But, you know, all that's good that they're versatile. And now, Doug, we're just getting these real sophisticated telemetry equipment that you hook up to a satellite.
Right.
And you can sit in your office and play on your computer and see every place that duck moved. 50 years ago, you had to rely on a band you put on his leg. You banded him here and he was killed here. But he might have been moving all around, but you never know that.
Right.
But today, with a lot more sophistication and a lot better equipment, we're learning a hell of a lot more.
Mark and I tomorrow, as you know, and as well, you probably going too, tomorrow's our opener of our September teal season.
I'm going to try and make a hunt.
Why do we have a September teal season? What is that all about?
Okay, the September birds come through early and go down into Central and South America. They go through 20 years ago unharvested, and that bird was not used. So what we did when we started banding them, we found out that the harvest came from South America and Central America. So we said, well, why can't we get 14 days, 15 days of hunting on that September teal that has no hunting mortality on him in the United States? So we're learning more about populations, and that gives the hunter a better chance and more opportunity.
So, and to give credit was due, Bateman.
Hugh Bateman.
Hugh Bateman wasn't he instrumental in getting that going? When was our first teal season in Louisiana?
I'd say in the early 70s, somewhere in there, and we just started shooting 4. Now we're shooting 6 a day because that population was unharvested. We could put more pressure on them and not hurt the population.
And I've heard the term, and correct me if I'm wrong, photoperiod migrators. Those birds, is it not a weather-driven event? Is it more the length of the days it triggers them to move? Or
that's what most birds move on, day length. And if you get they come down here, and the first place they hit is the beaches, the salt marsh beaches along the coast of Louisiana. And they'll build up there, and you can't really hunt them too hard because they still have this migratory restlessness. They're nervous as hell. You put a couple of good days of shooting on them, and they're gone. They're going across the Gulf. It's best to let them sit down, let them rest, let them get a belly full of good widgeon grass or millet or fall panicum or lepticlaw or something like that. Then hunt them, and try to rotate your blinds. Don't hunt the same blind every day, because then you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on that bird, and you're going to push him out. There's no two ways about it.
We've been in a lot of local debates and a lot of meetings here, and I think one of the big debates for our area anyway is a early season dates versus late season. We got guys that want to see an earlier season in the beginning of November. Then you always got that group that wants to hunt into late January.
Yeah.
I think you and I are in agreement that we got birds coming to Louisiana regardless of how cold it is up north. Obviously,
that's right.
Weather drives birds, but it doesn't have to drive birds. They're going to come based on the length of the days. Come.
And just like this September teal season, nothing's driving those birds down but photo period, and that's traditional. When they come, they're going to come on down, spend a few weeks here, and then jump across the Gulf. So I've kept records. I've hunted the same lease for 50 years. And I kept fairly good records that a biologist could keep on the numbers of ducks I killed versus the first week, second week, third week in November versus late after Christmas and into January. And we'll kill more ducks in November than we'll kill the rest of the year. And so I like the way the state has made this coastal zone to where we can get our birds in early, hunt them, and as we're getting older, I don't like that ice. And it's so nice for me to go out with my grandkids and my dog. I've always hunted with a lab, and have a good hunt and not worry about freezing to death. Mm-hmm. I hate to see a dog. I won't hunt a dog if there's ice on the water. I can't tolerate that. I won't hunt a dog either until the first frost, because then I know the alligators are down and they're not going to eat my dog. Mm-hmm. That lease I have, we picked about 35, 40 nests off of that lease. So there's a bunch of big females, mm-hmm. There's a bunch of big males on it.
Right.
So I don't want to subject my dog to that. So I'll hunt after the first frost, then I know it's safe, and I'll hunt him all through the season. But the better kill and the enjoyable hunt is in November.
And I agree with you, because, in my dealings with other lodge managers, we all keep records of what we kill, and those numbers consistently show a better kill ratio in the earlier part of the season.
Right.
And I know you've mentioned this too, that if the later we go into January, we change our tactics. Sometimes we pick our decoys up because we don't see those large bunches. But you've mentioned parabonding and stuff.
Okay, well, if you hunt late, mallards, mottle ducks, birds pair down on the wintering ground. So when they pair, they don't want to see a pond full of decoys. They want to be isolated, go in a corner, court, and courting all the way back up to Canada. So you're dealing with a bird that won't decoy, and he's hard to call. He's not going to come into a call. So and now if you have a lot of young birds in the population, that's good. They'll still decoy. But you know, the reports are coming this year that there's not going to be many young birds. So you're going to have to be dealing with adults that have been here 1, 2, and 3 different times. So it's going to be harder to get those to decoy. And, you know, once a bird pairs, that's it. he's not going to look at it now. You might get a bird fly over your decoys at a pair or something like that. But
so
as a
that would
rule,
explain why later season birds don't respond to the call that well.
Exactly right. They pair, and they got their mate, and they're going to get them off to the side.
Yeah.
And they don't want to be in big groups. Yeah.
Kind of switching gears and moving to the subject of geese. These guys are from up north, and y'all shot a lot of Canada geese over the years. I know my dad, he's passed away now, but he grew up at Grand Chenier right near Rockefeller. Yeah. And back in the 60s, y'all actually shot a few Canada geese in Louisiana. So why do those birds not come here anymore? What do you think happened there?
The Canada goose population in Grand Chenier and southwest Louisiana numbered 150,000 to 200,000 Canadas. And that was a giant Canada, the great big Canada. Swan Lake and Horseshoe Lake, Missouri and Illinois, stopped the flight of Canada geese to the south. And Doug, it's surprisingly how a few years of stopping up there, there's no birds in the population left to go south. So what we did, we went up and got a bunch, a couple of thousand, brought them down to Rockefeller, pulled their flight feathers out, fed them, and let them go back. And they didn't. They went back and stopped right at Swan Lake and Horseshoe Lake in Illinois. So we lost the Canada goose in Louisiana. We used to have some big populations on White Lake, the edge of White Lake, and also in Grand Chenier, and in Creole. We used to have some good population. And then we had the small cackling up here in the rice. But the small Canada still comes, not as often, not in numbers like it used to, but the big Canada, the giant Canada, is gone. And we're going to see more and more of that, and you can't blame Squaw Creek and Horseshoe Lake. They got some good people up there. They're providing lots of good food, and the birds stop.
So in your opinion, I know we've done a lot of research here in the last couple of years with the speckle bellies or white-fronted goose. Just looking at that raw data, it seems like a lot of our speckle bellies are spending more time in Arkansas now.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe we're seeing a trend similar to what we saw with Canada's? Or?
It could be. You never know how much of the home range is altered by feeding and supplemental feed and hunting pressure. You know, how much is hunting pressure moving these birds? Mm-hmm. You can't have a blind in every damn field. You got to give them some place to go, rest, digest their food, and get back in the air. Mm-hmm. We used to see that birds would come into Lacassine Refuge by the thousands at night, and right before daylight they'd go back out. And it was really something to see.
One thing, I read a report the other day, and I watched television, and you see all these guys going to Canada now and shooting these massive amounts of mallards and pintails and gadwall over dry fields. Yeah. Have ducks always fed in these dry fields, do you think?
Yeah, they've always used dry fields. And, you know, I banded ducks in Last Mountain Lake in Saskatchewan in the late 60s. And we bought the grain from the local farmers to bait the traps, to bait the birds. And the farmers were griping about us saving those birds because they eating in his field. They were always eating in that dry field. And then they go to water and push it on down. But that bird always used dry field.
Yeah, I've always looked up to you, and you've been my mentor over the years because I'm a wildlife biologist by degree too from McNeese State, and I know there's a saying, if you can remember it, you've always talked about that you cannot stockpile a resource of wildlife.
Right.
Explain that.
That's what we always said. You can't stockpile wildlife, like saving. No more than you can stockpile 1,000 pounds of butter out on that Blacktop Highway in the month of August. It's going to melt. So you got to use it, and you got to get some competent people on board to tell you how to use it and not hurt that population. And that's what hunting's all about. So many of these people who are anti-hunters don't understand the mortality rates of birds and the life table of birds. They think, you know, they all going to go happy, live happy forever after. They don't. Alligators, 85% of them die within 3 years of life. They're gone. So that's why we started the farming program. We went out there and picked up those eggs and used it rather than lose it. So you can find these areas that you can take advantage of and still not hurt the population.
I know this is kind of a sketchy question, but and I'm not asking you to pick sides here, so when you answer this, I'm asking your opinion. You've got Ducks Unlimited that's more conservation oriented, and then we've now got this Delta waterfowl, which is kind of somewhat focused mostly on predation of duck eggs up in the upper end. How big of a deal do you think predation on nest is in the northern, up in Canada?
I think it...
Obviously, they're both extreme. They're both important.
Yeah, DU and the other group, they both have a value. You know, they working up on predation, trapping coyotes or coons or whatever they're doing. So they helping in that general area. Ducks Unlimited kind of looked at the big picture from the northern territories and the forest all the way down into Central America and South America. So they're looking at a bigger picture and broader picture, but both are very competent people. And
I think that's been my opinion. I know locally, and I can't speak for the rest of the country, but those two organizations, some of the members have kind of taken sides that one's better than the other. And personally, I think they're both good, and we need to be members of both of them because they have two totally separate agendas that are all for the good of the waterfowl.
Right, exactly right. And that's the important thing. When you look at they helping the resource, it might just be in that localized area up in the Canadian prairies. In fact, when I was in graduate school, I used the book, the Waterfowl book, that was written by Delta Waterfowl. And that was our waterfowl book. Yeah. And a hell of a damn good book, very detailed, very exact. And I was in graduate school, I didn't know, but they were good. Yeah.
So
Canvasback on the prairie marsh.
Another hot subject in the waterfowl world, and I'm guilty as charged because I use them. Do you have an opinion on spinning wing decoys?
I think they're great. I use them. I've used them since they came out. I use some small teal spinners, and during the big duck season, I use mallards that spin too.
So,
and I think they're good they shorten your time in the blind. Now, if I can go and kill 12 ducks with my friends and get out by 8 o'clock, those birds have from 8 o'clock on to go in and rest and feed and preen and do their thing. So if the powers that be think that spinners are killing too many ducks, cut the season back, cut the bag limits back, but don't take away the art of waterfowling.
So you referred to it as the art of waterfowling, and I think, and I'm posing the other side of the argument that I hear is that the spinning wing decoy has allowed the less skilled hunter to be more successful.
That's good.
And they're blaming the more success of the less skilled hunter on the population of ducks overall. Do you think that's having an effect?
Well,
fly
let me tell you
wide?
about that hunter that just hunts once or twice a year. We need him. He's good. We want him in the fold. And if he can support us in what we're doing, I'm all for it. And if we're going to use spinning ducks and the powers that be in Patuxent that do all these mortality studies, and if they think they're killing too many, cut the bag limits back. But don't stop me from hunting. That's like the next thing, are they going to take my duck callers away? You know, and where are they going to stop? If it's legal, use it and enjoy it and enjoy the art of waterfowling.
And to add on what he was saying about we need that less skilled, because the more that less skilled hunter hunts, the better he gets. and it continues to contribute
Yeah,
to our numbers because we're losing people to hunting.
exactly
We've
right.
got to get more people in, and
Yeah.
if that's a way, then do it.
And that's a problem, and that what concerns me. Are we going to wake up one day and there aren't going to be any hunters? And then where are we going to be? You know, and where's the resource going to be? Ducks Unlimited puts millions of dollars into that waterfowl population, from the Canadian prairies all the way down to Central and South America. And I admire them for that. And they dig deep. A lot more than some states put into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's good, and we all got to be together.
So if to summarize what you just said, and correct me if I'm wrong now, but I almost heard you say that you're more worried about hunters surviving more than the duck population surviving.
Well, I'm afraid of losing hunters. And if you look at the duck stamp sales and the hunter license sales, it's going down. The small game, squirrel and rabbits, there's hardly anybody that hunts squirrel and rabbit. When we were a kid, if we killed a rabbit, we were Top Gun.
Right.
You know, and that's what got me in the woods, was that damn rabbit, trying to kill him, running 20 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I had dogs. We hunted them with dogs. I love to hunt with dogs. A lot of people are anti-dog, but I've always hunted deer and coons and squirrel with dogs. And I just think it's a great opportunity for a group like us to go out and with a good tree dog, and maybe there's just one gun in the group. The rest of them are just going along for the hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you kill a limit of squirrel. That's great. So I think we need to get more people into the sport, and that's where you can have strength.
You know, going to all these meetings and you talk to people and you always hear the phrase, we used to have a lot of ducks. We used to have ducks. In the old days, we killed ducks. But
Yeah.
I'm 48 years old, and I've been hunting. My dad took me to the blind in diapers with a BB gun, just like
Yeah.
you referred to your grandkids earlier. And we had 30-day duck seasons back then.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
had a 3-duck limit back then.
Two duck limit.
We're in my lifetime of 48 years, I'm living in the good days now.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah.
killing more birds now than I did back then. So you've hunted way longer than me. How was it back in the 60s back here? Were there ups and downs? Is that?
Yeah.
I don't think we're
the
seeing.
60s were a time of major droughts throughout the country. Rockefeller was so dry, you could land an airplane out in those big impoundments when they dried up. There was no water. Alligators were dying. And that was the drought years. And it reflected on the Canadian prairies. We had drought years up there. I hunted at the mouth of the Mississippi River. It took me 2 hours to drive and a 2-hour boat trip to get to the marsh. And then we camped there and hunt, killed 2 ducks, turn around and go home. That was a bag limit, 2 ducks. But you still had people interested enough in that. And hopefully the environment changed. We got a lot more birds coming in, and people are enjoying the hunt a lot more today.
So is it safe to say that there may be a decline of the duck population right now, but that's more of a cyclic thing than it is
Yeah.
doomsday report?
Right. When water makes ducks, water makes alligators, water makes fish. When you have lots of water in the marsh and it stays about marsh level, that's maximum production you getting out of that ecosystem. And you can have good alligators, good fish, and good duck food. So I think we still have lots of ducks. And you talk to some of those old guides, they say, well, we don't have the ducks we used to have. Yeah, you do, but they spread out over 5 different states. They're not coming to Louisiana. The snow goose population at the mouth of the Mississippi River came down nonstop from the Baffin Islands. Nonstop. You know, and landed on that Passalute public shooting area. And now we're getting a lot of short stopping on the snow geese. We almost lost the blue geese. When I was a kid, blue geese were more numerous than white geese, but now it's just the opposite. But it's still the same bird. But I think you're going to see more changes, so you're going to have to adapt. You can't be greedy. You know, you got a pie sitting in front of you, and you get a slice. Arkansas gets a slice, Missouri gets a slice, and that's the way it's going to be. And then when you get into trouble, you got all these people that are going to work with you to solve that problem and get over it. So that to me is just not what we do here.
On a different note, I got a question I've been wanting to ask you. So, coots, we call them poodoo, the French term. You know what we're talking about? Black duck.
Black
Duck. It's not even a duck. I guess what's the genus of a coot? Do you know that offhand?
No, I don't.
So we use them as an indicator around here that you got food, because they love to eat weeds and grass. And in our case, we use a lot of coot decoys, because if you got the coots, you got the food. And gadwall and the type of ducks that we shoot really decoy well to coot decoys. But one question that everybody asks is, when do coots migrate? Because you never see a flock of coots fly over.
Yeah, they walk back.
Well, somebody just told me yesterday that they show up on a Greyhound bus and get out during the night.
No, but the coot is an interesting bird. He the best decoy you can get, because he's a live
That's
decoy.
all we, exactly. And we use the fake ones.
He's feeding in that ecosystem, and you got a blind there, and you got 100 decoys out in there, and there's 200 poodles coming and going. Now they can eat you out, but I think while you have that bird there, your hunting is going to increase on certain species, teal and gadwall.
So do you know of any research? Do they actually migrate at night? When do they show up?
Yeah, they migrate at night, and again, it's photo period that they move on, and you'll see them driving down a Creole. They'll start gritting on the side of the road, building themselves up for the migration, and when a big southeast wind, they take off and off they go. LSU, Dr. George Lowry, was a renowned ornithologist, and he put students in that tower, in Lake Charles Tower, and he got a way to identify the birds on that radar.
Really?
Yeah, and he could tell when this is a duck, this is a coot, this is a goose. And they got some real good data as when those birds move in.
So they could
out.
actually pick up migrations on the radar?
On radar, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. So global warming is a big hot topic in the United States. I know you've got an opinion on everything.
No, I don't have much on global warming, but you know, our marshes are still freezing over every year. So I don't know if global warming is a real problem here.
And I know from you and I both read water levels a lot are a key to marsh management, and they talk about sea level rise and all that, but here we just came off a year where our whole system stayed lower than normal, and our marshes were low all summer. So
we had low rainfall years. May and back in April, we lost a lot of the rain, and April and May were dry, and the marshes dried up, and that really hurt the alligator nesting. Alligators, they're interesting, they're sharp, they're damn smart. They're not going to stress themselves to develop a cluster of eggs the size of a soccer ball and lay it on the bank and their pond dries up. What they're going to do, they'll reabsorb that ova rather than develop it. So they'll live on that ova during that period of bad times. And as the rains come the next year, they'll go back through their nesting cycle. You got to remember, the alligator nests for 35 years. So if he gets 4, 5, or 6 good nesting years, he's duplicated himself, you know, so the alligator's okay. But dry years, those alligators live on that ova rather than stressing themselves out. When you look at the calcium that goes into 35 A's, it's unbelievable. You can take the long bone of the leg and cut it, and on a non-nesting female, you got all the calcium still left in that bone. It's perfect. When you take a female that nested, cut it and open it up, you got lines all through there that they use that calcium. So reproduction in wildlife is a luxury. They don't do it every year, and it's because of the environment. If the environment's not right, they lay off. And ducks will do the same thing. When there's no water in Canada, they just stay in these big flocks on these big lakes and come on back when the temperature's right.
So I just heard, I guess if you want to call it a report from one of the guys that's been up in Canada, and the talk for this year is that because of the drought, they did eventually get water, but it was later in the season,
Yeah.
and that there was a late hatch, and there's a possibility that some of those fledglings might get caught by the frost and die before they can fly.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen that event happen in the past? Is that a common occurrence?
I'm not familiar with that late hatch, but I heard several people, the biologist at Rockefeller, who goes up to Canada during the summer and flies for the Fish and Wildlife Service. He said the late hatch is going to be good, but all the information coming from DU said the hatch is not. So there's some conflicts, and you know, whether that late hatch is going to make it, who knows? So
one of the things too, you talk about the success of a hunter and how many birds he kills in a season. If you have a weak hatch, which we potentially are going to have this year, you still have the same number of ducks. You're not increasing the number of ducks, but the ducks that do come down are older ducks.
Are harder to decoy.
And they are. It's tough shooting an older bird.
On a robo duck, they're going to be paired a lot of times when they come down because they're 2 and 3 years old. And so they're going to be harder to kill. And, you know, sometimes you think you're a great caller when those birds break off and come in and blow and blow and blow, and the birds take off and go the other way. But that's adult birds. And we're going to see a lot of that this year. All environment lives on trends, depending on rainfall, depending on growing season, depending on temperature. And what we've been in up in Canada is going into a dry several years. So we're going to see fewer and fewer ducks. Now, we still get 6 and 60 for the regulations. It didn't drop below this magical number. Once it drops below that, then you're going to get 4 and 40 or whatever. And we're going to have to tighten our belt. Then as the rains come back, you're going to see more and more ducks come in. Same thing that happens here. If we go into a drought in the spring, the whole country, all of southwest Louisiana will dry up. And the production is going to be down, model duck nesting is going to be down, so we're going to have to pass special regulations on that resident bird, the model duck, because it didn't make as many as it would in a good wet year.
So you just talked about the cycles, and that when we hit those magic numbers that Fish and Wildlife is designed, we have certain days of the season, and that it's probably inevitable that we're going to see a 4 and 45 day duck limit, 45 days, maybe even a 3 and a 30. So my question to you is, you're the business guy of the group. How is going from a 6 duck 60 day season to a 30 day season and 3 ducks affect the industry and the sales of hunting gear?
Well, I think it does affect it. I mean, the simple answer is it is going to affect it, but we've got to be proactive and come up with ways to, in those leaner years, do other things.
Yeah, but another thing, these hunters, like Doug Miller, he'd go hunting if you only gave him 1 shell, and he's going to go out there. He's going to hunt because that's part of his makeup. When it gets cold, you hit the marsh. And whether it's a good season or a bad season, you're still going to go. Now, you might not have as many new people coming in because they may be blocked because of poor success. One, I couldn't get a lease. Two, I went with so-and-so and we didn't see a duck. Well, that's part of it. But the old timers, the dyed-in-the-wool duck hunter, he's going to hunt.
And I think one of the things, issues going forward as a whole, for not only for hunting but for fishing as well, is public access. Is finding ways.
Yeah.
That's how you get that new hunter in. Finding places for them to be able to go. Opening private. You know, Arkansas does a pretty good job with public land, like over in Biomito, where there's you know, it can be crazy over there but there's people going.
But
we've got to find ways for public access.
yeah, but you know, on good years, you may make 20 hunts a year in 60 days, and you may kill 200 birds, 300 birds. But on a bad year, you only may hunt 10 days and kill half of that. But so be it. You know, you just pick your days
Right.
on a good flying day and go out and enjoy it, knowing full well we might not get our limit. You don't have to kill your limit to have a successful hunt.
I agree. Go for the hunt,
Yeah.
not for it's not catching
Right.
and killing, it's hunting and
Yeah.
fishing. And
Right.
go for the experience.
Yeah.
Go for what got you involved in the
Exactly
first
right.
place.
And I
the
think-
time spent with your father,
Right.
Yeah.
or whoever introduced
Well,
you.
and if you look at duck hunters at core, all have a passion for the outdoors, and whether it's chasing ducks this year, you may diversify and do a little deer hunting next year or something.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always something. You're going to continue to spend time in the outdoors. It just may not be focused on that one
Right.
species.
And you know, like last year, hunting was not as good as the year before. So I only hunted half the time that I hunted the year before. Because when you're hunting good years, you're killing limits every day, every day. You want to go every day, every day. And then when you go out and you kill 6 birds with a limit of 12, it kind of takes the push out of it. But you still go. And I'll see that sun come up every Saturday morning. I'm not going to turn it down.
And it's a special time, isn't it?
Exactly right. See that kid load his gun for the first time, you know, drop shells on the ground, and you got to tell him how to do it. But that's part of it.
It's part of the maturation process.
Yeah, yeah.
Teach them how.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's what's so much fun.
Hope everyone enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Boat. Ted Johanen's such a great guy, and he's a wealth of information, and it's always a treat to sit down and get to pick his brain and learn stuff about alligators. You know, if you watched the last episode of Express Outdoors, you probably saw a clip where we were talking about Hurricane Laura. Hit almost a year to the date that we had filmed all these episodes. And people say that lightning doesn't strike twice in one place, but Hurricane Delta 6 weeks later has now hit southwest Louisiana for 2 hurricanes in a row. And Ted Johanen, along with Gros Savon, has been the victims of these 2 hurricanes. And since this episode with Ted Johanen, he has completely lost his house. The wind basically took most of the roof off and has destroyed it. He's currently living in a travel trailer and says he's determined to rebuild and enjoy southwest Louisiana again. So along with Gros Savon and all the damage that's in these areas right now in southwest Louisiana, we want to again reach out and thank everyone for their prayers and their thoughts. We've had a tremendous outreach of people wanting to help us, and we thank all of you guys for that. So just wanted to let y'all know that we are coming back. Our reopening has been a little bit delayed because now we've been hit with a double whammy, but Gros Savon is going to be better than it ever was. We're going to continue to improve on the experience that we present. And again, we want to thank everybody for their thoughts and prayers, and we hope you continue watching Express Outdoors.